Good afternoon, grade 3. This is Mr. Jeremy explaining your work for today, March 18th, Wednesday. Remember again to please type your work on the slides that have a gold star. Today, you will only be typing on 5 different slides that have a gold star. What can I learn today? Today, I can answer a question about how often I do a free time activity. So last time we answered yes or no questions about free time activities. For example, the question in blue, the blue sentence says, "Do you walk the dog?" One way you can answer is yes, I walk the dog. Okay, but today we will add this part, how often, to the question, to the yes or no question, do you walk the dog? So here we have, how often do you walk the dog? One way to answer that is, I sometimes walk the dog. And if you want to make your sentence longer and include where, that's the purple part, and when, that's the green part, you can say, I sometimes walk the dog around the neighborhood in the morning. So remember, when you write a sentence answering a how often question, okay, you write the how often or often word before the verb. Okay, and we know that a verb is an action, like walk or throw or eat, okay? And in the sentences, we have underlined the action. So for example, walk is the action for walk the dog, okay? So if you look here at the bottom, you see the how often words sometimes coming before the verb walk. So what do we mean by how often words? And what are those words? Okay, the words that you see in yellow are those words. So I'm just going to read them to you. At the very top, we have always, and you can repeat after Mr. Jeremy, always. We have usually, we have often or often, we have sometimes, we have rarely, and we have never. What do you notice about this picture? Okay. If you said always has the most red, you are correct. If you said never has no red, you are also correct. If you said usually has more red than often, you are correct, and often has more red than sometimes. Rarely has more red than never. So the more red that you see, that means the more that you do something. Okay? So again, here are the how often words, and here is what they mean. So always means that you do something every day. Just about every day. That's always. Okay? Every time. Usually means that you do it a lot, almost always, many times. Okay? So if you remember, always has more red in the last slide than usually. Next, we have often or often. Often means that you do it more days than you don't. Okay? So maybe you do something for 4 days and you don't do it for 3 days. Okay? Sometimes means that some days I do it and other days I don't do it. So about the same amount of times that you do it and don't do it. And then rarely is almost never. Okay, you almost never do something, but maybe you do it once or twice. And finally, never, and the last slide had no red. That means that you don't do it, or I don't do it, 0 times. So if I were to look at Mr. Jeremy's schedule, okay, and these are different things that I might do for different colors. If you look at always, you see a time, a dot, green dot for every day. So always means something is happening every day, every time. Usually, it means that you're doing something most of the time, but not all the time. So if you look at the blue dots, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blue dots. So the only time you're not doing something that's blue is on Tuesday, okay, or a different day. And then we have often. If you notice, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 purple dots. So we have fewer purple dots than blue dots, but we're still doing something more than we're not doing it. And then if you look at sometimes, we have 1, 2, 3, 3 times, 3 orange dots. So that means, again, you do something on some days and you don't do it on others. It's about the same for do and don't. And then if you look at rarely, you don't see rarely, and then never, you don't see a dot, any dot for never, because never means 0 times. So if I show you a schedule here, okay, if you look at always, you see a green dot on every single day. If you look at rarely, you only see 1 red dot. And if you see never, you see no dots, okay? So that kind of explains the difference between the words. Always is the most, followed by usually, it's second, often, third, sometimes fourth, rarely, and then last is never. So let's look at Mr. Jeremy's free time activities. So I always use the internet. I usually play the guitar. I often watch movies. I sometimes walk the dog, and I rarely bake a cake. Okay, so baking a cake maybe happens like 1 time for a long time, and that's it. And one thing Mr. Jeremy never does is paint my nails. 0 times. I've never done that in my life, okay? So I will show you how I answered a couple of the slides with gold stars. You're only required to answer 5 or write on 5 different slides for the 5 different how often words, okay? So how often do you use the internet? I could simply say I always use the internet. So how did I write that sentence? Well, I wrote a simple yes answer. Yes, I use the internet at home. And remember, I just put the how often word always in front of the verb use. Okay, so my full sentence is I always, that's the how often word, use the internet at home in the morning. So this sentence on the bottom is longer because I included more information. I told you where and when. So when you're writing your sentences, try to include all of that information. So this is your how often free time activity chart. So you'll put 1 free time activity that you do always, 1 that you do usually, 1 that you do often, 1 that you do sometimes, 1 that you do rarely, and then finally 1 that you never do. And then you will write 5 sentences, 1 on each of the slides that I will show you. So you're going to type your name here. This is your schedule for the week. So this is actually the week we're in right here. the 15th through the 21st. Okay, and then your month schedule. This is just to show you the difference between always, usually, often, sometimes, rarely, and never. Okay, so all you have to do here is type your name. So these are the slides that you will use. Okay, each one has a different how often question. Remember, we make a how often question by using a yes or no question. For example, do you play the guitar? And adding how often, this part in yellow, before the rest of it. Okay, you'll type your answer where it says type your answer here. You can use this graphic organizer at the bottom to help you organize your sentence. Okay, so I will show you the rest of the slides. Again, you're only required to do 5 of them. If you would like to do more, that is more practice for you. So here they are. And again, I included ideas for your sentences, including ideas for who, which you won't really use because in each sentence you're answering I. Okay, you're answering for yourself. But here is what, where, and when. That is all, grade 3. Please email me your work, and thank you for all of your hard work.